the theme of today is how to develop more wisdom, applying wisdom in our daily lives, and to use Buddhist teachings, Buddhist practices to help strengthen that quality in terms of how we relate to our lives. One of the key teachings of the Buddha, quite a touching statement that he made, was that he said, because of not understanding, not knowing four things, not seeing four things clearly, that you and I and all beings have had to travel and trudge through this long, long round of births and rebirths and redeaths and rebirths, according to our Buddhist understanding of things. So that what he highlighted as being what stops us from seeing things clearly and from wisdom from really being applied in our daily life, these are probably very familiar to everyone who's gathered here, what are called the Four Noble Truths. So for many of us, this is sort of chapter 1, page 1 Buddhism. Four Noble Truths. Okay, I know those. Got that. Suffering, origin, cessation, path. Okay, what's next? So it's very easy. The information around of the Four Noble Truths, the actual text, is extremely simple. A child can of 5 or 6 or 7 years old can easily understand that there's the experience of dissatisfaction. That's we're not totally happy all the time. Okay, that the cause of that dissatisfaction is self-centered craving. That's the cause of that. The prospect is that kind of dissatisfaction can come to a complete end. Yes, that's the good news. And the means whereby it can be brought to an end is the fourth truth, which is the what we call the Noble Eightfold Path, or in short, the qualities of virtue, mind training, and wisdom. So the information of the Four Noble Truths you can describe in a minute or two, but going back to what the Buddha said, it's because of not understanding these four things, not seeing those clearly, that we continue to experience dissatisfaction and limitation. We find ourselves unfree and in states of stress and conflict, anxiety, alienation. And so that I feel is, and also this is the central theme of Ajahn Sumedho's teaching here in the West for the last 50 years, nearly. He arrived here in 1977, and so we're now at 2024, so about 46, 47 years he's been expounding on this theme of the Four Noble Truths for nearly 50 years here in this country, and a few more years in Thailand after he started to teach in 1974. So 50 years ago in Thailand he began teaching. So so I thought in terms of wising up that to say begin at this point to consider what is it that stops us from seeing clearly, and how can we arouse that capacity to clarify our vision and the way of seeing, the way of understanding, the attitude of mind that is really going to be helpful for us. The first of the Four Noble Truths, the truth of dissatisfaction, is what in subtle and coarse ways that most of us are experiencing repeatedly throughout the course of a day. Just feeling anxious about where am I going to sit? Have I got a chair? Am I going to be late? Where did I get my lunch? Did I organize my lunch? I'm not reading anybody's mind. This is just statistically likely that we've had these ordinary everyday anxieties, irritations, like, oh, that person is sitting in my place. I always sit there and there's someone in my place. So anxiety, aversion, the 1,001 different kind of griefs and tensions, stresses, difficulties, incompletenesses that we experience during the course of a day. So our general reaction towards dukkha is the Pali word, is and you can translate as suffering, which is maybe a little bit dramatic, but dissatisfaction, discontent, not quite rightness, that feeling of things being out of balance is how we can probably best render the word dukkha. But that feeling of things not being harmonious, not being complete, that sense of say insecurity in the heart, that's really what we need to learn from. So the Buddha's encouragement is to turn the attention to that rather than follow our usual patterns. So interestingly enough, the word dukkha, little etymological sidetrack, so it's made of two parts, du and akka. So the akka is like the English word axle. It refers to the hub of a wheel. And then du is a Pali word, a prefix meaning wrong or bad or incorrect or out of balance. So du akka is like a wheel not set truly on its axle. So I think we've all experienced bicycle wheels that are not running true, or more often, very often in the supermarket or in the airport, you pick the trolley with the wonky wheel. Dukkha, that is dukkha. So even in the Buddha's time, that was like his way of characterizing this sort of basic spiritual malaise, is that the wheel of your chariot not running true, that you're off kilter, and that's a feeling of dissatisfaction. But then if the wheel can be set truly on its axis, and that trueness, that rightness, the Pali word is samma, that which is integrated or balanced or in tune, then when our wheels are running smoothly, yes, there's a natural feeling of comfort and fluidity. So in terms of developing wisdom, the Buddha points to changing the attitude towards that experience, that feeling of dissatisfaction, imbalance. Now, often what we do is we blame ourselves. I've got something wrong. I've done something wrong. I'm incomplete. I haven't tried hard enough. I don't know my subject. I haven't prepared properly for this. I'm not lovable enough. I'm not competent enough. I have failed. There's something wrong with me. I've done it wrong. Therefore, dukkha. Or we blame somebody else or the government. They've done it wrong. I'm suffering. I'm unhappy because of them. This individual, the one I'm living with, the one who's running the local council, the whoever we might pick upon, our boss or our difficult member of the family. I'm suffering. I'm experiencing difficulty, dukkha, because of them. So there are many, many ways that we deflect that experience of discontent, dissatisfaction, blaming ourselves, blaming others, and various other tactics. But the Buddha's advice is like that it's never going to lead to any real satisfaction. It can't do. And so his encouragement is somewhat counterintuitively is to turn the attention to that very experience, that very feeling itself, and to say apprehend or to receive, to acknowledge that experience of dukkha. So even though what we want is freedom and happiness, then mysteriously the first step of that is to turn towards that experience and recognize this is the feeling of incompleteness, this is the feeling of insecurity, this is anxiety, this is what it feels like, this is irritation, or this is frustration. This is what here it is, and this is what it feels like. So in a sense, owning or receiving, apprehending that very experience. So in one of the teachings that the Buddha gave about this, he said that feeling of dukkha, dissatisfaction, it can ripen in two ways. One is in more dukkha, like I'm unhappy, I'm frustrated, so I'm going to distract myself. We don't usually spell it out like that. We just find ourselves eating something, watching something, looking for another tune on Spotify, or scrolling through our phone just to find something, anything that'll be different than this. So we distract ourselves and we create more causes for more dissatisfaction to arise in the future. Or, he said, the other alternative is what he calls search, which is to say there has to be some alternative to this. There has to be a way that I don't experience this unhappiness, this sadness, this frustration, this disappointment, this irritation. There must be some alternative. Now, what is that? So that's really what is the source of faith, saddha, that there has to be a way that my heart, my mind can be free of this quality of discontent. Now, what is the way forward? What is the way that freedom can be actualized? So that's the encouragement of the Buddha, to turn our attention onto feelings of frustration and discontent, not just out of kind of being sadistic or malicious, like just to wallow in the feelings of discontent, but rather to help the mind to see beyond that, to recognize this can't be the whole story. There has to be a way that the heart can be free of this. Now, what is that way? So that say freeing the heart from those cycles of what we call the cycle of birth and death, or those cycles of say addictive behaviors and subjective captivity, the subjective sense of me being trapped in this life or this place or with these problems, these issues. That is what we can call the first the exit points from that cycle. Again, not to get too technical, but I assume many of you are familiar with Buddhist teachings to some degree, otherwise you wouldn't sign up to spend your Saturday sitting and meditating and listening to Buddhist teachings. So what we call the cycle of dependent origination, or the wheel of birth and death, that's describing the cycle of repetitive behaviors, how we find ourselves trapped, repeating the same habits, getting lost in the same worries, caught up in the same irritations and hopes and disappointments. We call this the cycles of birth and death, or the process of dependent origination, that cyclical, repetitive a pattern of behaviors, the addictive cycle, you can also call it. So that the first exit point from that cycle, the freeing the heart from that, mysteriously, is that acknowledging that feeling of dukkha, dissatisfaction. And then another of the exit points from that cycle that we can actively use to help see things more clearly, and is to look at where that dissatisfaction is coming from. So in a way it's comparable to going to medical treatment, so that if you are less than fully healthy, then you go to the doctor and the doctor says, where does it hurt, or what's the problem? So that turning the attention towards the experience of dissatisfaction is like recognizing, I need to see the doctor. I should get this checked out. Something's going on here. There's a symptom, and so then that readiness to go to the doctor, to get it checked out, to go and see what's happening. That's the turning the attention towards the experience of dukkha, of dissatisfaction, and then consulting with the doctor in using the same analogy is then the doctor says, well, the cause of this symptom is this particular infection, and the nature of the infection, or the problem, the cause of the illness, as the Buddha describes as spiritual malaise, is self-centered desire, tanha, or craving. So that can be coarse kinds of desire, addiction to things like alcohol or cigarettes or sugar or caffeine, or compulsive work activity, shopping, or meditation retreats. There are all kinds of objects of desire that we can lock onto. So sense desire, but more subtle kinds of craving as well. What is called the craving to become, or the craving to be, bhava tanha, the desire for defined existence, to be something, to have, recognized, or as a competent person, as a teacher, or as a doctor, or as a good parent, or as a skilled in some field, that's who you are, that's what you do. So that desire for defined being, bhava tanha, or its partner, which is the desire to not be, vibhava tanha, the desire to switch off, to not feel, to get rid of. So in terms of wising up and freeing the heart from its limitations, then that's what the encouragement is, to get to know where those areas of attachment, of craving, where they form in our lives. And in meditation, we have this is an essential part of that process, is looking to see what the mind locks onto: a sound, a feeling in the body, a memory, a plan for the future, an excitement, a sadness, a worry, whatever it might be, that the mind latches on to a particular object, and then through that grasping, through that latching on and grasping, clinging, then we're creating the causes of that spiritual malaise, that kind of shutting down of the heart, that distortion of our inner vision, as you can say. And then when looking at that, the treatment, or the way of handling that, is recognizing that clinging and to let go. So for each of the Four Noble Truths, there's a treatment, or a way of relating to these that the Buddha encouraged. So Noble Truth number 1, the truth of dissatisfaction, the encouragement is to recognize it, to apprehend that, to receive that, to say, here it is. This is dukkha. Not that I'm to blame or you're to blame, but here it is. There is this experience. So that looking at it, knowing it, and also studying it. The word that the Buddha uses to describe that kind of treatment, or that approach, is parinyayanti, to study, which is the same word as being used to do a course of study in a university. Parinyaya is to explore, to study, to look at. So for the second Noble Truth, the treatment, or the way of handling it, is to let go. So this is one of the reasons why around Buddhist meditators, let go, let go, let go, is a basic encouragement. The habit of clinging, of grasping, is that's the cause. That's the kind of the COVID virus, the insidious infection that gets in everywhere very easily. It mutates rapidly, effectively. That's the tanha virus, the craving. It's very insidious and it's very effective, very active. But the treatment, the way of handling that, is recognizing that quality of grasping, whether it's grasping at an identity, a social role, your age, your nationality, your job, your gender, your age, whatever it might be, that grasping, or that wishing to get rid of, to switch off, to not feel, to not be, vibhava tanha, to recognize those habits of clinging, and the treatment is to let go. That's the response. That's the basic way that we wise up. We let go of that which is obstructing our natural wisdom, our natural awareness, and our natural wakefulness. Another of the Buddha's teachings that is very significant, and that Ajahn Buddhadasa, who was one of the great spiritual masters of the current age in Thailand, he was a very creative, very effective teacher. And I remember I had the chance to go and spend 2 weeks at his monastery back in the late 80s. That now sounds like ancient history, but 1988, some of you weren't even born then, probably. But 1988, I spent a couple of weeks at Suan Mok Monastery. And Ajahn Buddhadasa said, I used to say that you could summarize the Buddha's teaching in 4 words. It said, and there's this particular sutta, this particular teaching where the Buddha makes it really clear. This is all you need. These 4 words. This says everything. He says, if you've heard this, you've heard everything. If you've practiced this, you've practiced everything. If you've realized the truth of these, you've realized everything. This is the whole package. And the 4 words, Pali, first of all, Sabbe Dhamma Nalang Abhinivesaya. The English is, don't cling to anything. That's it. He says, if you know that, if you heard that, you've heard everything. If you've understood that, you've understood everything. If you practice that, you've practiced everything. If you fully realized that, you've fully realized everything. So the Buddha was not prone to hyperbolic, inflated statements. If he said something, he meant it. So it's really, so Ajahn Buddhadasa sort of, the master has made this statement. Let's not ignore that if you've heard this, you've heard everything. This is, so if you think, well, I can't remember all these words, all these Pali terms, all this kind of material in Buddhist teachings, all you need is the 4 words. Don't cling to anything. Nothing whatsoever should be clung to. It's a little bit longer, but same meaning. So that is the core of wising up, of finding a place of peace and freedom and ease in our lives, and also being able to function effectively in the world, I would say. So then, the third noble truth is the prognosis, staying with the medical model. So, is the malaise curable? Can the heart be? Can there be a freedom from suffering? And the third noble truth is yes, that complete freedom from that dissatisfaction, that dis-ease, is possible. That is realizable. And so that then the way so that when the cause of that dissatisfaction and tension, that insecurity has been let go of, then the result of that is peacefulness. There's dukkha nirodha, the ending of that dissatisfaction. The heart can be totally free. So the doctor's saying it's curable. It's good news. And in that respect, it's helpful to understand that when when we talk about the ending of dukkha, it doesn't mean never having any aches and pains. It doesn't mean everybody liking you all the time. It doesn't mean all your traffic lights being green and always having a parking space. It's kind of, it's kind of obvious, but also not obvious. Is that I've been practicing Buddhism for all these years. Why have I got aching joints? Well, because the dukkha that will end with dukkha nirodha, that third noble truth, that is that total ending of dukkha, it doesn't mean you'll never have any aches and pains. It doesn't mean that everybody will like you. What it means is that you'll find a place in your heart where it's absolutely not a problem. And in this respect, I like to point out that the Buddha had chronic back pain. If you look at the teachings, the suttas, the discourse called the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, just that he describing his final days as the Buddha, running up to the final passing away. The sutta begins with him, or in the early part of the sutta, he says, "My body is like an old cart, like an old wagon held together with strings and straps. It's like a broken down vehicle. The only way I can experience comfort, physical comfort, is to completely absorb the mind into emptiness." So the only way he could feel comfortable physically was to completely dissociate his attention from the sense world. If he was seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, then ow, he experienced pain. And there's numerous places where he's giving a Dhamma talk, and again in his later life, and he'll say to Sariputta or Mahakachana or Moggallana or Ananda, say, "Ananda, my back is paining me. The assembly is still awake. You carry on giving a Dhamma talk. I'm going to lie down and stretch my back." So the Buddha would interrupt his own Dhamma talk to go and stretch his back, because It was painful to him. He didn't create a problem out of it, and he would invite Ananda or Sariputta or one of the Sangha members to step up and say, "The assembly is still awake. Why? It's a good opportunity for Dhamma, sharing the Dhamma. I'm going to need to stretch my back, so I'm taking off. You carry on." So to me, that's a very profound and important example. That so any of you who've come along today with the idea that ending suffering means no more aches and pains, or your debts will be paid off, you'll never find any difficulty with your neighbours. You came to the wrong place. so that's another caveat. But what we can do is we can find that place within us where it's absolutely not a problem. I chose to live in this house. My neighbours are like this. Here it is. So now there's an interesting test of how to live harmoniously with this person. Or I've got this chronic illness, which means there's always an ache in this particular limb or this particular joint. Or I've got to take insulin injections every day. Okay, that's the way it is. So that's what you work with. So the mind can find a place where it doesn't create any difficulty or stress, any discontent around those natural limitations of the experiential world. So with respect to the third noble truth, the ending of dukkha, and the treatment or the way of handling that, of working with that, very interestingly, what the Buddha says, it needs to be dukkha nirodha, the ending of dukkha. It needs to be realized. And those of you who've been around Ajahn Sumedho and his teachings, or read many of his books, or listened to his thousands and thousands of his Dhamma talks online, might have noticed that he spends more time on the third noble truth than maybe the other three, really. And the reason why is because when we experience peace, when our dukkha stops, when there's been a noise in the street and things go quiet, or you had an illness and then you got cured, or you were needing to make a journey and you've arrived, or you were tidying up the house and you finally got the place tidy, or you've finally got through your email list. Then you go, I've arrived. All the emails are answered. The house is clean. We've got here. I've finished my job. The road's gone quiet, and then it's peace. It's consciously pleasant and peaceful for 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds, maybe 5. Again, I'm not reading anybody's minds. Like, how did he know? This is statistics, not psychic power. So after 4 or 5 seconds, we start to look for something else. Having arrived is no big deal. The street being quiet is like, okay, what's next? Our instinctual processes, our sensory processes, look for the next interesting thing. So we don't appreciate peace naturally. Our sensory system, our instincts, our kind of animal ancestry has us hunting for the next thing that's dangerous, promising, or has got some interest or some value to it. We don't like peace. So that the realization of dukkha nirodha, ending of dukkha, it takes effort to appreciate silence, spaciousness, stillness. And when we do, when there's that effort to appreciate that, then there's a blossoming of that. There's a richness, a kind of great beauty in that quietness, that stillness, that peacefulness. But if it isn't realized, and the Pali for that is sachikata bhanti, if it's not consciously noticed and realized, then we follow the habit of just looking for the next interesting thing. Okay, I've answered all my emails, there must be something I've got to do. And if you notice, and I bring this up quite often, when you say you've finished cleaning your house or your flat or whatever, and you sit yourself down on the sofa and go, thank goodness. And then after a few seconds, those 4 or 5 seconds, then you start thinking, I'm sure there's something else I should be doing. Right? And then, really interestingly, so you feel a bit anxious that there's something that you should be doing, and then you suddenly remember, oh my goodness, there's the laundry. And you actually feel pleased that there's another thing for you to do. Isn't it weird? Again, I'm not reading anybody's mind. It's just how we are. It's like, oh yes. So something is, it loves that defined being. This is bhavatana. I've got to do the laundry. Still got that to do. So even though it's another set of objects that need to be attended to, something is pleased, is satisfied. There's an object for me to latch onto. We don't like peace. We don't like silence. We don't like spacefulness as from an instinctual and reactive habit. I would say the heart itself, the pure heart, if you like, the quality of the heart itself does rejoice in peace, but it gets swamped by the instinctual habits that come from self-view and our conditioning of a lifetime. So to complete the set, then the fourth noble truth is that of the Eightfold Path, or the short version, just virtue, concentration, or mind training and wisdom. So that's the treatment. That's how we most effectively bring about that letting go in all the different dimensions of our life. So the Eightfold Path spells out the areas where we get attached and where the letting go needs to happen. So that that's how that arrival at well-being, that arrival at the ending of dukkha, that's how that takes shape most effectively. That is the medicine, if you like. Carrying on with the medical model, that's the treatment. The medicine is the Eightfold Path. And so that that needs to be the way of working with that needs to be cultivated. You need to take the medicine, because you can go to the doctor can accurately read the symptoms, identify the cause, give you the medicine, but if we don't take the medicine, as our teacher Ajahn Chah would often say, the doctor can give you the right medicine, but if it just sits on your shelf being the right medicine, like, yeah, I've got the stuff. Yeah, cure is guaranteed. If you don't actually take it off the shelf and take the medicine, then it can't bring about that kind of transformation. So that these principles of the Four Noble Truths, maybe all of us who've been interested in Buddhism for even just a few weeks or maybe a few years would have come across these and can think, well, intellectually that's not very demanding, not very challenging, and also they're not particularly exciting or inspiring. It's not like ultimate bliss. Four Noble Truths. It's like it is rather like going to the doctors or a dentist. Like, you don't think, oh, whoopee! I wonder if I can work in a dentist appointment this week. Just to kind of brighten up brighten up the calendar. Get another trip to maybe I apologise if there's any dentists here. Know that you're much maligned, or nobody goes to visit the dentist for amusement or to bring some extra colour into their week. But it's very useful having teeth that are functional and not painful. So that the Four Noble Truths, their formulation is not very exciting or kind of uplifting, but they're extraordinarily helpful in bringing about these changes whereby we can draw upon our own wisdom. We can cultivate that quality of wisdom and awareness and live more effectively in our lives.